There's a moment in late September 480 BCE that nobody really talks about in the way they should. Not because it's been hidden, but because understanding it means sitting with something genuinely uncomfortable about human nature and the choices we make when we're cornered. A young Athenian sailor, let's call him what he probably was, maybe 20 years old, maybe younger, wakes up on the island of Salamis in the pre-dawn dark. He's not sleeping well. None of them are. He can smell the sea. He can probably hear it, that low, constant sound of water, waves, the nervous energy of thousands of men who know that in a few hours, everything ends. Either Athens survives or it doesn't, and if it doesn't, neither do they. He knows this. Everyone knows this. 3 days earlier, the city that his grandfather helped build, that his father fought to keep safe, was burned. The Persians came with a fleet so massive that Greek writers literally couldn't count it accurately. They just kept saying bigger and bigger numbers because there weren't words for an invasion that size. 150,000 soldiers, maybe more. Hundreds of ships. An empire that had already swallowed everything from Egypt to India, now focused entirely on crushing this small city-state on the Aegean coast. And Athens is gone, literally gone, burned to the ground. The temples, the houses, the ordinary places where people live their lives, all of it ash. But here's what's important, and this is where most history gets it wrong. The Athenians aren't hiding. They're not defeated. They're not accepting this.
Instead, they've made a choice that only makes sense if you understand how desperate they actually are. They've put nearly their entire fighting force, thousands of men, into ships. Wooden ships. Trireme warships that are about the size of a city bus, with rows of rowers, a small fighting crew up top, and basically no armor. They're going to fight the Persian fleet in the waters around Salamis. They're going to do it with ships that are smaller and honestly much more vulnerable than what they're facing. And they know it. The man in charge is Themistocles, and he's been pushing this strategy for months, before the burning, before everything fell apart. He's been telling everyone that the real battle isn't at Marathon or on the plains, it's at sea. The Persians can only win if they can supply their army. They can only do that if they control the sea. And if Athens can somehow defeat the Persian fleet, the whole invasion falls apart. The Persian king, Xerxes, the guy who had apparently ordered engineers to whip the sea when storms destroyed his bridges, is stuck. Without ships, his army can't eat, can't stay supplied, can't maintain the invasion. It's actually genius strategy. Completely insane, but genius. The problem is, nobody really believed Themistocles until it was too late, and now here they are. The city's refugees, women, children, old people, they're on islands, hiding, watching the smoke from their burning homes drift across the water. And the men are on ships, about to find out if Themistocles is a visionary or if they're about to commit mass suicide in the name of a long shot.
The young sailor probably thinks about his family. He probably thinks about the fact that he's young, and this seems like a particularly terrible way to die. He probably also thinks about the fact that he has no choice. None of them do. This is the choice Athens made when they refused to surrender. They put everything into this moment. And he's part of that moment now. What makes Salamis different from other battles, what makes it genuinely the deadliest naval engagement in the ancient world, isn't just the number of people involved, though there's that. It's what happens to make it possible. It's the trap. The Persians have this massive advantage in numbers. They have bigger ships, more experienced sailors, more military resources. By every logical calculation, they should destroy the Greek fleet. Xerxes has brought enough military power to the Aegean that they outnumber the Greeks by about 3-1, maybe more. The Persian Navy commander, Ariabagnes, is confident. Everyone in the Persian camp is confident.
They're already mentally planning the invasion of mainland Greece, already thinking about what happens after they win. But Themistocles understands something that the Persians don't. Size is a disadvantage in narrow water.
The Strait of Salamis is tight. It's a compressed space between the island and the mainland. It's perfect for a defensive action. It's terrible for an invading force that brought all its advantages to sea in the form of overwhelming numbers and bigger ships. Big ships can't maneuver as tightly. They get in each other's way. They can't coordinate when there's no room to spread out. And if Themistocles can force them into close quarters, that advantage disappears. So that's what he does. He deliberately makes the Persians think they have to attack right now, immediately, before the Greeks can escape. He creates the impression that the Greek fleet is about to flee, that there's infighting in Athens, that the navy is losing faith, that if the Persians don't attack in the next few hours, the opportunity will evaporate. The Persians take the bait. They take it completely. Xerxes decides to attack at dawn. He's going to push the Greek fleet into the strait, trap them, and crush them. It's the logical move. It's the move that looks winning on paper. It's also the move that puts his entire fleet into the one space where their advantages don't matter. Throughout the night of September 28th, the Greeks prepare. They're not panicking. They're actually methodical about it. They know what's coming. They know Themistocles is right about the strategy, even if some of them aren't sure it's going to work. Themistocles is actually already preparing for the possibility of failure. He's arranged to send his family to safety in case the whole thing goes wrong. When the sun comes up, the Persian fleet is on the move. Hundreds of ships, an absolutely terrifying sight if you're a Greek sailor sitting in a trireme. The water is full of them. The horizon is just crowded with Persian vessels, and they're coming straight at you, and you're supposed to hold a position in a wooden ship and hope that your officers know what they're doing.
The first Greek ships actually act like they're retreating. They pull back deeper into the strait. The Persians follow. And as they follow, the advantage that the Persians had evaporates. The narrow water means the massive Persian advantage in numbers doesn't matter. You can't have overwhelming numerical superiority if you can only fit a limited number of ships into combat at once. The Greeks lock the oars on the back of their ships. The ramming begins. This is where it stops being a battle in any noble sense. This becomes a slaughter. This becomes the reason people don't really talk about Salamis the way they talk about other battles. Because what happens in the strait is systematic destruction of human life on a scale that ancient history rarely discusses clearly. The trireme was designed for one thing: ramming other ships and destroying them. The prow is reinforced. The point is to hit another vessel hard enough to shatter it, to send it underwater with all the rowers still inside, to turn the enemy ship into a tomb. And this isn't metaphorical. The rowers, the men who power these ships, they can't escape easily. They're chained or locked into position. They have to stay at the oars so the ship can function. If your ship is rammed and starts sinking, you're trapped. You're going down with it. Hundreds of Persian ships are going to experience exactly that over the next few hours.
The thing that makes Salamis difficult to write about, the thing that probably made ancient historians uncomfortable too, is the scale of the drowning. This wasn't a battle where two armies fought. This was a trap that became a mass death event. The Persian fleet, panicked now, confused, their ships colliding with each other as they try to avoid the Greek ramming attacks, starts coming apart. Ships that were designed to be powerful in open water are now trapped in a space where power means nothing. A ship that's bigger and heavier becomes a liability when you can't maneuver, when you can't spread out, when the enemy knows the water and you don't. The Greeks have local pilots who know every shallow reef, every current, every tricky part of the strait. The Persians don't. Persian captains who avoid one ramming attack run into underwater obstacles they didn't know existed.
Ships that try to retreat get tangled up with other ships trying to do the same thing. The entire Persian naval advantage, the thing that was supposed to guarantee victory, becomes a mass of confused, crashing vessels and men dying in the water.
And then the Greeks start picking them off. Thousands of Persian sailors are in the water. Thousands. The sea is full of drowning men. They're wearing armor, heavy armor. The kind of armor that's useful on land in a formation where you're protected by the weight, but in water, in a panicked scramble to survive, that armor becomes a death sentence. It pulls you down, it holds you under. There are estimates, ancient estimates, so take them with appropriate skepticism, that suggest between 7,000 and 10,000 Persian sailors died in a single day. Some accounts are even higher. The numbers are so high that historians actually argue about them because they're hard to believe even for a massacre. But considering how many ships were in the strait, considering that a single trireme could have had 200 men on it, considering that ramming a ship means everyone on that ship is either dead, dying, or drowning, the numbers actually make sense. They might even be conservative. The water becomes unswimmable because of the bodies. Ancient accounts, and this is the part that people really don't want to think about, describe sailors being unable to find clear water to escape through because there are so many corpses. Dead men floating, men dying, men already dead from the impact of the ramming, or from drowning, or from the weight of their own armor taking them down.
And the Greeks keep attacking. They're not done. They see a Persian ship, they ram it. They see men in the water. Some ancient accounts suggest they threw javelins or used projectiles, not in a way that feels good, not in a way that's portrayed as heroic in most historical writing, but in a way that's very final, in a way that ensures there are no survivors, in a way that transforms a naval battle into something closer to a massacre. Here's what's important though, and this is why the discomfort matters. The Greeks do this because they have to. They're not cruel for cruelty's sake. They're fighting for the survival of their city. If they don't win absolutely, if they don't push the Persians so decisively that Xerxes has no choice but to retreat, then Athens is gone. Not defeated, gone, erased. The people who survive are slaves or refugees for the rest of their lives. So they push, they don't stop, they don't give quarter. They don't have the luxury of mercy. By the time the sun reaches its highest point that day, the Persian fleet has essentially ceased to exist as a fighting force. The Persian ships that can flee are fleeing. The ones that can't are sinking. The Persians lose somewhere between a third and half of their total naval force in a single morning. Thousands and thousands of men die. The beach on the Persian-held side of the strait, they say, becomes so covered with corpses that the Persians have to hire workers specifically to clear the bodies for weeks. Salamis was a victory, but it was a victory bought with human suffering on a scale that's hard to actually wrap your mind around. The reason nobody really talks about Salamis the way they should is because it reveals something uncomfortable about history, about war, about the choices we make when everything is on the line. It's not a story about heroes. It's a story about desperation, about ruthlessness, about a calculation that says, better the enemy dies by the thousands than our city disappears. And honestly, in the context of what they were facing, that calculation was justified. Because after Salamis, everything changes. Xerxes realizes that his invasion is finished, not in 5 years, not eventually, now, immediately. The moment the Persian fleet is destroyed, the supply lines for his massive army are cut. He can't stay in Greece, he can't push forward, he has to leave. He has to get back to Persia before his enemies capitalize on his weakness. So he does. He leaves behind a general and a significant force to try to hold Greece, but Xerxes himself flees. And within months, the Persians are pushed out entirely.
The invasion fails. Athens survives. And because Athens survives, everything that comes after, the democracy that develops, the philosophy, the art, the influence of Greek civilization on the entire Western world, all of that happens because of a morning in 480 BCE when a trapped fleet decided that absolute victory or nothing was the only acceptable outcome.
The young sailor who woke up that morning, terrified and alone on a wooden ship, he survives. Most of the Greek rowers survive. They're injured, traumatized probably, but they're alive. They go back to rebuilding their city. Some of them become citizens of a democracy that they literally died protecting. They get to be part of something extraordinary. But thousands of men on the other side of those ram ships don't get that chance. They get to be a statistic in ancient history. They get to be the reason that textbooks note Salamis as one of the deadliest naval battles in ancient world. The thing that makes Salamis genuinely remarkable, the thing that should haunt us a little when we study it, is that it worked. The strategy was brilliant. The sacrifice was brutal. And it literally changed the course of human civilization. It's not a feel-good victory. It's not something that feels good to contemplate. But it's real history. It's what actually happened when a smaller force decided that they had to win absolutely, or not at all. And everything we are as a culture, everything that came after the Greek Enlightenment, the development of Western thought, the entire chain of consequences that followed, it all traces back to that morning, to desperate men in wooden boats, to the ruthless choice to do what was necessary when surrender meant extinction. That's what makes Salamis the deadliest, most consequential naval battle in ancient history. Not because of the numbers alone, but because of what those numbers meant, what they cost, and what they made possible.